And welcome to the next homework assignment, homework 1.2, and we're going to talk about adding and subtracting negative numbers. They call it adding of real numbers, but basically we're just going to be learning how to do positive and negative numbers. And I think you've done this in your basic math class, and a lot of people probably have done this already, but for the benefit of people that haven't done it, I'm not going to assume that you have done positive and negative number addition. I'm going to start from scratch. And the people that do know how to do adding and subtracting and negative numbers, you can skip this video, go on to the next homework. But maybe you'll pick something up. Who knows? Anyway, there's 20 questions. That seems like a lot of questions, but basically, when you have a lot of questions in a homework assignment, they're really short answer questions, so I wouldn't worry about the number of questions as it being a problem. Now, additive inverses are called what? Well, geez, there's two choices, and you have three possible chances to pick from two, so you have to get this right. Let's get it right the first time. How about opposites? Okay, an inverse is another word for an opposite. So even in English, inverse means opposite. So what we're going to do is say, nice work, fantastic. Okay, now let's see. To add real numbers with different signs. Okay, so basically what they're asking you to do here, let me go over a little lecture on how to add or subtract negative numbers, and then we'll answer this. Let's take the numbers 5 and 3, and we want to add those together. Okay, 5 plus 3 certainly is 8. Not a big whoop. Okay, now what do you think negative 5 plus negative 3 is? Well, here's what you do. First off, I'm putting parentheses around those numbers because, especially the first one really didn't need the parentheses, but the second one sort of needed the parentheses because if I didn't have the parentheses, you'd have a plus and a minus together, and it just doesn't look right. Okay, so to mathematicians, they don't want two signs, two operations next to each other. So, and that's the reason for the parentheses there. It's also a way to indicate that you're dealing with two negative numbers. At any rate, if you have two negative numbers, okay, what you do is you take the absolute value of the numbers. What's the absolute value of negative 5? 5. The absolute value of minus 3 is 3. So I took the absolute values of the numbers, add them to get 8, but you keep the sign of the original numbers. The sign of the original numbers is minus. Okay? So, same thing here. I mean, if you really want to get technical about this, when you basically how to add, this is how you add, adding like signs. Adding like signed numbers. Okay? What you do is you take the absolute values of the numbers. The absolute value of 5 is 5. The absolute value of 3 is 3, just like down here. You get 8. The original number is 8, but you always keep the sign of the original numbers. Up top, the original numbers were plus, so it's plus 8. So on the bottom there, the second line, you see two negative numbers being added. Okay, the absolute values give you 8, but you keep the sign of the original numbers. Now, adding different sign numbers. Signed numbers. This is the best I can do, guys. I'm sorry. Different sign numbers. Okay? Adding different sign numbers. What do I mean? One positive, one negative. So say we have plus 5 plus a negative 3. Okay, how do you do that? Or negative 5 plus 3. Okay, how do you do that? Well, here's how you do that. You take the absolute values of the numbers. Okay, take the absolute value of the biggest number, make it first. Keep the biggest number first. the absolute value of 3 is 3. Subtract the smaller absolute value from the biggest one. So when you subtract it, you get 2. And you keep the sign of the bigger absolute value. The sign of the bigger absolute value was plus, so the answer here would be 2. Now here, get the absolute values. Put the biggest one first. 5. The absolute value of -5 is 5. The absolute value of 3 is 3. Put the biggest one first, because you're going to subtract the smallest one from the biggest one. You're going to get 2, but you keep the sign of the bigger number. Sign of the bigger number was minus. That's what you got there. So that's basically, we're going to do 18 problems then. This will really drill it home for you. Now we can answer this question. To add real numbers with different signs, which is the second scenario I talked about here, find the difference between their absolute values, which I did, and take the sign of the number with the biggest, larger absolute value. Nice. Very good. Okay. Now, what they want you to do is use the number line to add these. I really don't like it. Okay. The idea being, hey, start off with the first number. Okay. Start your points over here, 3. This is where I'm pointing to. I'm adding a -1. When you add a negative number, you go in the negative direction, and you should get 2. But really, do this. Forget the number line business. That's not going to work well when you have numbers like 1,000 and -763. Okay, you're not going to use the number line. Just use what I just discussed. Take the absolute values of the numbers, the biggest one first. Absolute value of 3 is 3. Absolute value of -1 is 1. Subtract those absolute values. That's equal to 2. Okay, then you have to make a decision. Is it positive or negative? Well, it's positive because the sign of the bigger absolute value is positive. So the answer is 2. Great job. Okay, so what's this? Okay, you're adding different signs. Absolute value of 3 is 3. The absolute value of -3 is 3. Subtract it, you get 0. And it doesn't really make much. There's no bigger number. The absolute value of 3 and the absolute value of -3 are the same sign. So you get 0. So there's no real sign to attach to this. Check your answer. Great. Okay. Forget this number line business, really. I don't want you to use a number line. Just use the rules of how to add positive or negative numbers. Okay. Look in the textbook. Look in the references. I'm going to put a slide on the in Blackboard that will summarize everything I've just basically said here. It'll look a lot better than this, I guarantee you. But these are the same. These numbers that you're adding have the same sign. So you take your absolute values, 5 and 8, add them together. You get 13, but the sign of the absolute value is negative because both numbers started off negative. Okay. Now, name the property illustrated by the... What you're doing here is you're taking a number, -200, and adding the opposite. Okay? You're adding the opposite. And so I would say, when you add the opposite, they tend to cancel out. In fact, not tend to cancel out, they do cancel out. So I would say additive inverse. Okay? Inverse means opposite. That's the key there. Opposite. The rest of the stuff it doesn't apply. Okay, this is called the identity property. Okay, now why is that so special? You start off with a number, -c, plus 0. You're not adding anything to this number. This could have been -5, -10, whatever. Adding 0 to it still maintains its value. Okay, whatever this value was, it still maintains. And so basically they're saying, since it doesn't really change, it maintains its identity. So when you add 0, it's called the identity property, and there really isn't any math you need to do there. Okay. So, you think you can do this? Different signs means a different technique. Different signs, one's plus, one's minus, the 28's plus, the other one's minus. You take the absolute values, take the big one first, subtract the smaller one to get 24. Keep the sign of the bigger absolute value. The bigger absolute value is positive because it started off with positive. So that's the answer there. 24, 24, nice work. And that, basically you're just going to be doing this all day. Okay, you're going to be doing this all day. This would be the number 13. All right? Because what did I do? Here's what I did. I took the absolute values of these numbers. Do the biggest one first, 18. Subtract the other one, the absolute value is 5. I get 13. And you keep the sign of the bigger absolute value, which is positive. And see how they did this? They put parentheses around there so that the two signs don't hit, because it just doesn't look right. Look, 10 plus a negative 8. That doesn't look good to me. And mathematicians don't like that either. So what do you think that is? 2. 2. Absolute value of 10. Absolute value of 8. Different signs. We're going to subtract 10 minus 8 absolute values gives you 2. The sign of the bigger absolute value is positive. That's the answer, 2. Halfway done. Okay. Do you think the answer is going to be positive or negative here? It's got to be negative, guys, because you're adding two negative numbers. The answer can only be more negative, because that's a situation where you're adding numbers of the same sign. When you add numbers of the same sign, you add their absolute values. So what you want to do is add the absolute value. 86 plus 17 is 103. Okay, 86 and 17 is 103, and you keep the sign of the original numbers, which is negative. There you go. And I'll leave you with a few to do on your own, I think, toward the end. Okay, I'll do the decimals. I'll do the decimal ones. The decimal ones really, it's okay to use a calculator. No one's going to stop you from using a calculator. And you really should get used to dealing with decimals, because the whole world isn't 5s and 3s and 2s and 1s. Okay, you're going to deal with numbers that have decimals in them. But the idea is pretty much the same. Take this is two numbers. These are two numbers, one's positive, one's negative. You're adding them together. Keep the absolute values. Take the bigger one first, subtract the smaller one. Okay, I'll do that right over here. 4.2 minus 0.9 equals 3.3. Equals 3.3. But now we have to decide, is this number positive or negative? Well, it's positive because the bigger absolute value is positive over here. So I would say that 3.3 is the answer. Get rid of all the gibberish in between. There's your good job right there. I bet you there's going to be a fraction. Nope. This is identity. Look, 0 plus anything is whatever this other thing is. You don't even have to think about it, really. When you add 0 to anything, it doesn't change that other thing. It's called the identity property. 0 is a great number. Okay, now this guy here. Maybe we'll throw a little paper. Let's clear this out. Don't save this. File, new sheet of virtual paper. Come here. All right, let's write this down. Negative 6/7 plus parentheses, negative 1/7. Well, you still got two negative numbers here, right? Two negative numbers, you take their absolute values. Here's the absolute value of the first one. Absolute value of the second one. You're going to add them together, right? See, the technique doesn't change if you have fractions, decimals, or whole numbers. It's the same technique. I have the same signs that I'm adding, so I take their absolute values, add them together, and this is not too bad because they have the same denominator, so I take 6 plus 1 over the common denominator, 7. Well, 7 over 7 is 1. Don't enter 7 over 7. It's 1. Now what you got to do is, the next step is decide, hey, is that 1 positive or negative? Well, since we started off with 2 negative numbers and we're adding them, the answer has to take the sign of those numbers, which is negative 1. So I'm going to put negative 1 in there. Hit enter. Good job. Good job. Now I think there's going to be, oh, this is, let me just do a quick scan of, yep, different things. Okay. I just wanted to see where I'm heading with this. Okay. Okay. One's positive, one's negative, huh? All right. First off, here's the problem. Okay. And look at this. I put the negative sign up top. It doesn't matter where you put the negative sign as long as you put it somewhere. Generally, when I have a fraction, I'd like to put the number on the top. Okay, that's just me. Now, there's no way for me to even do this problem because the denominators are the same right now. So you got to remember, when you have fractions, you have to have a common denominator. And the common denominator of these fractions is 12. 12. Okay? Because 12 goes into 12 one time. See, this fraction really didn't change. But this fraction did change because 6 has to become 12. I have to multiply the bottom by 2. I have to multiply the top by 2 to get negative 10. Now we have a hope and a prayer to do this problem. Whether you have positive or negative numbers, you couldn't even do it because they had different denominators. Well, the same deal. Okay, it's the same exact deal. I have one negative number and one positive number. You take the absolute value. Well, the absolute value of the bigger one is going to be 10/12. And you're going to subtract from that the absolute value of the smaller one. That's going to give me 10 minus 1 is 9 over 12. And basically, you always have to simplify your fractions. So this is going to be divide top and bottom by 3, 3 over 4. But that's not enough now. We have to decide, hey, is that positive or negative? Which of these absolute values was bigger? The 10/12. Its sign was negative. You always take the sign of the bigger absolute value. So I'm going to put a negative on that 3/4, plug it in there, and see some green. Okay, negative 3 over 4. Hit enter. Good job. Yay. Yay. Now, this is the same stuff, but we're doing 3 numbers at a time. 3 numbers. See, so far we just did 2 numbers. So what we're going to do is do some virtual paper, write the problem down. And basically what you got to do here, you don't really need the parentheses because there's no number in front, so no operator in front. 92 plus negative 2, negative 1. What you got to do in left to right order, that's how we write. So in left to right order, you're going to bundle 2 of those, come up with an answer, then take that answer and do plus negative 1 on that. So let's do this guy. What's negative 78 plus 92? Well, what I see here is one positive number, 92, and one negative number. I'm going to take the absolute values and subtract them. So if I subtract 78 from 92, I should get 14. What sign do I use? Well, the bigger absolute value was 92, so it's positive. That's good. Copy the rest of this problem down. And then do this. 14 plus a negative 1. Same thing. 14 minus 1 is 13. Keep the sign of the bigger absolute value. Positive. 13. Check your answer. See, I'm not lying to you. The next one. Let's do this. Just copy this. And don't be intimidated by the number of terms. Because you're only going to do 2 at a time anyway. Just means you have to do more work. Let's do these two first, the left to right order. 109, different signs. I'm going to take 109 minus 99 is 10. Take the sign of the bigger absolute value, which is positive. This 109 is bigger. Okay. Copy the rest of this down. Okay, I'll do these two. Different signs. Absolute value of 45, negative 45 is 45. Minus 10 is 35. And we take the sign of the bigger absolute value, negative 35, that's a 5. Plus 25, bring the rest down. Different signs again. 35 minus 25 is 10. Minus, take the sign of the bigger number. I'm going to put a negative 10 in there and see some green. Fantastic. Okay, let's see what this thing is. Barometric pressure in a certain city dropped 5 millibars, then it rose 2. After that, it dropped 10, and then it rose 8. What's the total pressure change? Okay, let's start off with a nice fresh sheet of paper. Don't save it. File, new, okay. Pressure, it dropped. So I guess it was minus 5. Started off with minus 5. Then it rose 2. After that, it dropped. Dropped as a negativity, minus 10, plus a minus 10. Okay, so minus 5 is a drop. Adding, when it rises, it's a positive. Minus 10, plus 8. So we'll do 2 at a time. Negative 5 plus 2 would give you the negative 3. I'm going to go a little faster here. Plus a negative 10. Copy the rest down. Do these two. Two negative numbers. Same sign. Add the absolute values. 13. Keep the sign of the numbers. Bring down the plus 8. Different signs. Subtract the absolute values. 13 minus 8 is 5. Keep the sign of the bigger absolute value. Minus 5. I would say minus 5. Well done. Well done. Yeah, last problem. Okay, temperature in the freezer was 13 below 0. Negative 13 below 0. Then it got 18 degrees warmer. What's the new temperature? Well, 13 below 0 would be minus 13. And then it got warmer, plus 18. The new temperature is 5 degrees. 5 degrees. Check your answer. Well done. So that's addition of real numbers. And I'll see you in the next video when we subtract these numbers.